Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Content Patch for the 23rd of September 2013. My name is Total Biscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, Grand Theft Auto 5 surpasses $1 billion in sales in just 1 week. Sony details the game upgrade program. PS4 exclusive Deep Down from Capcom will be a free-to-play title, and we're a little late to the party on this one. Talked about it during the podcast, but since it's going to be a short show, might as well cover it individually anyway, and that is the fact that Diablo 3 is getting rid of its auction house. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. Take-Two Interactive, the publisher of Grand Theft Auto 5, has announced that it has passed $1 billion in sales during its first 3 days at retail. This would make it the fastest-selling video game of all time, which is pretty damn impressive considering that Black Ops 2 hit $1 billion within 15 days. GTA 5 did it in just 3. Which is absolutely absurd, to say the least. They also announced that it had done $800 million of those sales in the first 24 hours, which I believe would make it the biggest entertainment launch of all time. A rather crazy figure when you consider that Halo 3 managed to make the biggest entertainment launch in history with $170 million in day one US sales. Now, that of course doesn't really account for how much it got elsewhere, especially considering that GTA 3 launched worldwide on the same day. But regardless, it's an absolutely ridiculous achievement. I mean, if you compare those to movies, the top all-time domestic release for America was Avatar. $760 million box office revenue across its entire lifespan. If you were to look at worldwide all-time box offices, then you're only looking at about 15 movies total that have ever made more money than that at the box office, and we're talking about through their entire run all around the world, not in the first 3 days. That's absurd. You're talking about movies like, say, The Hobbit, Jurassic Park, Pirates of the Caribbean, things like James Bond Skyfall, Iron Man 3, huge titles. Weekend records, I mean, it's not even close. $207 million was the highest ever US gross across a weekend, and that was for Marvel The Avengers. In about the same time period, GTA 5 has made $1 billion. That's insane. I mean, it really is. Admittedly, is anyone actually surprised that GTA 5 is selling an absurd amount? We already knew that there was enough pre-orders for that title to actually push it past the overall cost of production. As far as we were aware, it's estimated the game cost $280 million. They had more than that in pre-orders alone. So we already knew it was going to be a success. But isn't it interesting to see how GTA's actually got to this point, considering how it started? It very much started as a fairly dark but fun satirical game, and the franchise grew, and it grew on the waves of controversy. It courted it actively. Now it's gotten to the point where GTA is so well known that the name has become ubiquitous and quite frankly misused by people who don't really know an awful lot about video games. They pretty much think of violent video games and they think of Grand Theft Auto first. That's the first thing that springs to mind 99% of the time. It used to be Mortal Kombat. Now, of course, it's GTA across the board. It's certainly strange that we've got to that point, really, because as far as I can tell, GTA has got a little bit milder over the years compared to what it used to be. Kinda didn't used to give a damn. Now I feel that it does, mostly because it has to support some kind of coherent crime narrative, as opposed to the original games, which very much didn't, and as a result didn't care at all about what they portrayed and who they actually offended. But GTA is a pop culture icon now, it's very much an institution, which is probably not what the designers were originally looking for, but I bet they can't be complaining about the payday, I've got to say. So if it's become an institution, if it's become part of the course, then that'll be fine by them if it continues to sell in these massive numbers. As to whether or not adding it on PC at release date would have affected it, probably not that much. I think GTA is such a big deal, and it is the biggest release of the year, that if you really wanted it, you probably went and bought it on console anyway. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see a spike in console sales that actually correlates with the release of GTA 5. I don't even have to speculate because it has happened. If you look on the hourly charts for Amazon for PlayStation 3, top of the charts, GTA 5, followed by FIFA 14, followed by the GTA 5 500GB PS3 bundle. So it has resulted in a console sales spike. Who could that be? I have no idea, but it wouldn't surprise me if a few PC users were just saying, you know what, let's just go for it. Yeah, Wouldn't surprise me at all, and those guys might even buy it again if they want it on PC later on. So, you know, you could say what you want about it, and personally it annoys me, but it's probably a pretty good marketing technique, and that's something that Rockstar are masters of at this point. Certain titles for both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One will be eligible for upgrade under a $10, €10, or £10 program, which allows you to take your PS3 or Xbox 360 version of a title and exchange it accordingly for a copy on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. Sony has detailed how this will actually work, and currently it applies to 4 titles: Call of Duty Ghosts, Battlefield 4, Watch Dogs, and Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which is of course very interesting considering none of these are first-party releases. However, they are all multi-platform releases. The program is going to be available for both digital and physical games, although it works slightly differently. If you buy the digital version, then you simply get the option to buy the upgraded version for a discounted price on your account. However, if you own a physical copy of the game, you will be able to redeem a code, which allows you to download the PlayStation 4 version from the PlayStation Store. However, if you want to run it, you will have to put the PlayStation 3 disc in the drive. This is, of course, designed to stop you from selling the PS3 version and being able to then play the PS4 version, which makes complete sense. I don't really think that anyone should be surprised by that. Unfortunately, the pricing is not looking so good on this, with the announced upgrade prices being $10, €10, and £10, which is, of course, a bit of a rip-off, to say the least, for the guys over in the UK who will, for some reason, have to pay more to upgrade, even though they are downloading exactly the same data. Not ideal, is it? No, not really. The price disparity across those regions does continue to be rather silly. It's also been announced that if you are playing the PlayStation 3 version of Final Fantasy XIV: Realm Reborn, you will be able to transfer your character and account to the PlayStation 4 version for free. I would say that I was surprised to see this being the first time that this kind of program has been put into effect, but you should also consider the last console launch was like 8 years ago. Back then, the ability to download full games wasn't even available. Xbox Live did not have full games available for download, only Xbox Live Arcade games, which were limited very severely in terms of their actual size. So the ability to upgrade digitally is something that's kind of new, at least to consoles anyway. It's also not entirely surprising because they are looking to try and get those early adoptions, which is more difficult to do if you have to deal with the fact that your console is not backwards compatible. You are taking a risk, especially if you sell your old machine. It's more likely that people will try and hold on to their machines, which of course means they can't trade them and their games in against the cost of a new console, which means it's a more expensive proposition. So, as far as I'm concerned, this kind of had to happen. This is something to coax people over, as far as I'm concerned. What's also important about the majority of the games that were listed there is that they have some kind of persistent online component. In the case of Final Fantasy, Battlefield 4, and Call of Duty Ghosts, that is something that will be transferred along with your license over to the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One. And in an uncharacteristically reasonable move, they're also going to be porting the DLC over as well. So if you bought DLC, you will have access to it again. I guess it does make sense. Those games are very much service platforms. You want people to keep playing them, especially considering the release times. If you think about it, think about when those games are actually coming out compared to their DLC release schedule. You look at the launch of the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, both coming within a couple of weeks of each other, both around the time that Call of Duty Ghosts is coming out, and a few weeks after the release of Battlefield 4. And by that point, there most likely will be no DLC whatsoever available, so if you are looking for the upgrade, then you may get it sooner rather than later, especially when it comes to Battlefield. You're looking at the possibility of buying that game on a previous system, and then maybe you get a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One for Christmas, or something along those lines, or you spend your Christmas money on getting something like that, and there'll be maybe a maximum of 1 map pack out by that point. They want you to buy the other 4, and they want you to buy the skin packs and things like that, so it does make sense. It's not a bad program, honestly, it really isn't. I have no complaints whatsoever, and I think the way that they're doing it is pretty damn reasonable, although, of course, do note that there's that subtle swipe at the used game market there, requiring you to hold on to your disc, making sure that you cannot massively trade in copies of the old one in order to get the new one. It seems like they're just slowly putting little things in to try and reduce the impact of the used game market. I tell you, if they can't kill it in one foul swoop, they will work to take it down a piece at a time. You can pretty much guarantee it. Deep Down has been getting an awful lot of attention lately, especially considering that they showed it off at the Tokyo Game Show. It was also announced to be a PlayStation 4 exclusive, which got a lot of people very excited, at least got those who intended on owning the Sony console excited. However, it turns out that this game is actually going to be a free-to-play title, which was quite surprising to say the least. The actual release date for the title isn't known right now, but they did mention that the open beta would be available around the launch of the PlayStation 4 in Japan. So we're looking at 2014 February for open beta for Deep Down, and then obviously a release soon afterwards. This announcement has not been received well by most people, as far as I can tell, and I don't necessarily blame them. Many people were looking forward to a big budget $60 in-a-box exclusive that they could buy, and now are wondering whether or not Capcom can actually be trusted to put out a good free-to-play title that isn't a complete and total cash cow. It is, of course, not the first free-to-play title to be announced for the PlayStation 4. Stuff like Blacklight Retribution, PlanetSide 2, and Warframe have all been announced for the system, and for the most part seem to be coming out at launch or somewhere around it. However, it is the first original IP that has been announced as a free-to-play title that isn't already available elsewhere. We know what to expect when it comes to the business model of Blacklight or PlanetSide 2, because those games are already out on PC. We know exactly how they're monetized. What we don't know is how this title will be. And it's a little concerning to say the least, because it would appear to be more of a hardcore-orientated title. It's a little bit worrying, because the business model could very well compromise the integrity of the game. This is something that is going to have to be dealt with by console gamers now. Obviously on PC, we've been dealing with the free-to-play model for a number of years, and we have decided what's acceptable and what isn't. Obviously, we haven't done so in unison or in harmony. A lot of us very much disagree on what's acceptable, but for the most part, the free-to-play market has had an awful lot of things to look at and has modeled itself accordingly. And games that have not have fallen flat on their face. The free-to-play market on the console is very, very limited. There are only a few titles that use that business model. Games like Dust 514 and DC Universe Online. They don't really have a great library, and I have to wonder how it's going to end up working on console versus PC. Would there even be a difference? I mean, in theory, you don't really need one, honestly. You can use the same model. The question is, do they want to? And more to the point, will Capcom be trusted to actually execute that correctly? At this point, it is a little hard to say, considering that Dragon's Dogma Quest, as well as Monster Hunter Online, the other Capcom free-to-play titles, were very much aimed at a Japanese audience, and there are no plans, currently at least, to release those in Western markets, who have a very different sensibility when it comes to free-to-play titles versus the Asian territories. So it's very hard to say. Judging by Capcom's previous track record when it comes to monetization, I wouldn't hold out too much hope of this working particularly well. I'm certainly very disappointed to see that title become free-to-play. I feel that it's likely that the integrity of the game will be compromised as a result of that particular business model. I would have preferred just to have something in a box. But we will see how it turns out. There's little point in judging a book by its cover, and certainly not a chicken before it's cooked. So we'll see what it turns out to be as we go towards the open beta in February 2014. And finally, I'm a little bit late on this one, but we did cover it on the day that it happened on the Co-optional podcast, so I might as well talk a little bit about that. Blizzard has announced that they will be removing the Diablo auction houses, both the real money and in-game gold auction house, in March of next year. In a short video on the Diablo 3 channel, they described their reasons, which match up pretty well to the complaints that we had around the launch of Diablo 3, claiming that it very much affected the way that the game worked to a negative degree. The fact that you could buy loot in the game reduced the overall enjoyment of a game that was focused on killing stuff in order to get loot in the first place. It's certainly hard to disagree with that. It's kind of cool that they have come around to it, though. I'm honestly quite surprised. I didn't expect them to take the real money auction house out. Yeah? I expected them to work around it, not to actually remove it entirely. But I'm glad that they did. Now, they claim that this is also coming along with a revamp of loot, which is expected to be fully implemented by the time the expansion Reaper of Souls comes out, called Loot 2.0, which means that the loot is designed simply to be of better quality, but there will be a little bit less of it. So you're not going to be constantly drowning in terrible items over and over again. I said it around the time of the launch, and I still believe it, and apparently have been very much vindicated in this belief, that the auction house did not help anybody. It very much ruined the experience, because you have to build around the idea that the auction house is there. There's no way of avoiding it. At least in Diablo 2, you could avoid trading, you could avoid duping, you could avoid all of those things simply by not playing with people that you didn't know. You didn't even have to connect that game to the internet at any point. With Diablo 3, this entire thing is interconnected. And there is no way of ignoring the fact that the auction house is actually there. As a direct result, you then have to tune your drop rates in order to make the auction house actually work. And where is indeed the excitement of gathering loot when you know that there's like 300,000 copies of the same damn item on the auction house? And to be honest, it wouldn't have even been that bad if the loot had actually been interesting, but I put about 25 hours, I think, into that game before I just got sick of it and left. And I know you're going to tell me, oh, that's not enough, you need to experience Inferno. I'm not going to play the same damn game 3 times in order to get a harder difficulty. It's not going to happen, I'm afraid. Absolutely not. And the loot was dull. It was absurdly dull. Torchlight 2 smashes it in that respect, as does Path of Exile. I'm not really sure what the hell they were playing at there. How do you go backwards so far, I wonder? But I'm glad they're getting rid of it. It may very well be that this will make the game better. And a lot of people are going to say, too little, too late. Again, I don't believe that. There are 12 million installed users for that game. They could very easily reinstall the game and play again if it happened to be better. And yes, they want you to buy the expansion. And if they're making positive steps forward in order to make that happen, then isn't that the best way to market the expansion to you? Hey, if more companies could use that as their form of marketing, then we'd have a much better games industry, but I think it comes down to the idea that they were just so arrogant in the first place to believe that it was a good idea. That's what bothers me the most. Like, how could you? How could you possibly? I wonder how many of the devs actually wanted that system to be in place, and how many of them really believed the rhetoric that was going out there. We should also point out, by the way, that this is not getting rid of the online-only requirement, which I still view as a huge problem, considering we have seen time and again that Blizzard servers cannot be relied upon in order to be stable. And always-on requirements have been causing a lot of problems for a variety of Blizzard titles over the past few years, including, of course, StarCraft 2, which I am very deeply involved in. So it's a positive step forward. I hail them for doing that. I am happy that they've done it, and I'm also happy that they finally came out and said, yeah, this was a bad idea. We kind of knew it from the start, and if they'd listened to us in the first place, of course, it would have never happened, but, well, business is business. Here is hoping to a new and better Diablo 3. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, but before I go, I'd like to give you the OC Remix track of the day. That's what's going to happen. And I have a trance track for you. I like it a lot. The title is, of course, Phoenix Wright. Yes, of course. What else could it be? Looking forward to the upcoming release of Dual Destinies. Phoenix Wright is a series that I enjoy a lot. And I have a track here by DigiE, and it is called Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trance Turnabout, which is a nice little medley of tracks from the Phoenix Wright games. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.